Welcome back to the Anxiety Slayer podcast. We're so grateful to you for listening in. Ananga and I are here today to share some thoughts on how you can create a personal oasis, a safe space in times of chaos. Hey, Ananga, how you doing?
Hey, Shan.
Perhaps the beginning of our conversation can be about how joy and gratitude can make a difference in our lives when things feel so chaotic and out of control.
Yeah, gratitude, finding joy. I was reminded of Brené Brown, who uses the word and the coexistence of anxiety, sometimes intense fear, and joy and gratitude. I think she writes about that very beautifully. And there's an example in, I can't remember which one of her books, but she describes a family scene where she was kind of struck with fear of loss and at the same time felt so incredibly happy and grateful for the moment. And I think sometimes in, traditional Western society, we think it's either or, we're happy or we're not, we're well or we're not. We fluctuate between the dualities of life. I was also reading this morning from somebody I like to learn from, and he said that gratitude's an antidote to depression. If we can hold gratitude, it really does fend off those lower moods where we feel that times are sad or chaotic, things are happening beyond our control, things that make us worried or heartsore. We have to go there more consciously, or sometimes even if it's our nature to be grateful, we might kind of get blown off course. But I think there's something very sweet in returning intentionally to gratitude.
Oh, yeah. Well, because if you don't, you will get swept away by the surface of all of the media hype, all of the headlines, the sad state of affairs here, there, and everywhere, news stories that we were never meant to know about before all of these screens and cell phones became our daily reality. And you can get really pulled into that negative space of being.
Yeah.
I've noticed it in myself where I'll catch myself saying a number of things in a row that are just so, how is that helpful to be that negative, be that angry or combative or what have you, and to come back and be like, wait, what is the beautiful energy underneath all of this right now? There is so much that doesn't get a headline. There's so much beauty and so much to be thankful for, and it can be the smallest of the smallest things that keep us in that place of peace, because we go under the surface, we go beneath the waves of Lake Michigan or of the ocean. I mean, one of my favorite places to go is to the water, and I'll often put all of my troubles and worries onto a big stone and throw it out into the water to release it, to get rid of it.
Yeah, I've done that before. I found that really quite powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the opportunity to go to the water as regularly as I need, really. But I think if you're near a body of water and you can do that, it's a very wonderful. And yeah, one of my mentors uses this example of going beneath the waves. She said, I'm a deep sea aquatic and I live beneath the waves. And she said, sometimes we surface to deal with the necessary things and then we go deep again. And we just stay out of the chaos. And it's a practice. And sometimes we're on the surface getting, thrown around and we get overwhelmed and then we kind of lose our balance or we become dysregulated. But then we catch ourselves and we remember and we go back to where we feel safe. But I think as you were speaking a couple of minutes ago, I was thinking how easy it is for us to become overwhelmed and how we need to remind each other and remind ourselves that there's always something we can do to help ourselves feel more centered and more safe.
And I will also say it is perfectly healthy and it's okay if you're angry about something that's happening in the world or in your family or in your community. It's just that we don't want to live there.
Yeah, it has its place for sure. But yes, we don't want to live there.
And you've said many times over our conversations is that when your peace is tied to the external world, what's happening outside of you and in your bubble, everything will shake you. Everything can shake you because you've tied it to that space instead of having that peace tied to your inner world, tied to being the deep sea swimmer, the one who knows that there's so much more peace and joy and gratitude to celebrate, to be part of, than all of the rest of the garbage that's meant to throw you into fear.
Yeah, we need strong roots, don't we? We need to be tethered to something that's beyond all the external stuff, something timeless, something safe, whatever our path is, whatever our faith is. We need to be watering those roots. And then, when the storms blow, limbs can come off a tree, but if the roots are good, the tree doesn't go over. There's one challenge is to be externally focused, where we're going to get frustrated and we're going to witness things we can't control, and that can really disturb us. And the other thing is to remember that no one can disturb our inner peace but us. But we can really disturb our own inner peace. We really can bring a lot of things inside that shake us up. And again, in our Western culture, I think we're not really raised to understand that that is something we can change. It's something we can work with. We can cultivate resilience. We can cultivate inner peace. We can practice. And it is a practice, and it takes time, and it ebbs and flows, but we can do something about it.
Hmm. This is where it's so very important to spend our time to carve out our lives doing the things and experiencing everything and anything that brings your life meaning. To put your attention where your focus goes, energy flows. It's really about investing in the things that nourish us and not making excuses that you don't have time for that, or that you're too busy, or that you have this and that and the other to do, and that doesn't allow you to spend even a small amount of time each day doing something that brings you complete joy.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be this giant choice either. It can be something very, very small that brings your life meaning. Like feeding the chipmunk. I love to feed this little chipmunk that I've named Frankie when I'm out in the garden. I know that's probably sounds really silly, but this little guy is so sweet. And it's this little connection that brings me joy. There's no other reason for it other than to thank this little creature for his energy and give him a little name, give him a peanut and send him on his way.
I think that's great. Those moments that just keep us in a sweeter place and stop our heart from becoming hardened.
Well, and if you notice, if there's anybody in your life today, and I suspect there aren't many, but sometimes they're family members or people that we care about that take in so much news, and depending on the source, take in so much negative garbage, and then their whole being is spewing that garbage, that negativity, that fear, and it just goes on, and they don't even know it. They don't even realize how, oh, these things happen, or it's one thing after the next, or it goes on, kind of like Eeyore and Winnie the Pooh. Everything is negative and depressing and awful. Well, of course it is, if that's your daily bread.
That's your nutrition. That's what you're taking in. Yeah, it reminds me of computer studies when I was at school when computers first really became a thing in education. And the first thing they taught us was garbage in, garbage out, when you're learning to write basic code. And it's the same for us, garbage in, garbage out. But then love in, love out, wisdom in, wisdom out. There's so many things we can bring in. And again, we can forget. And I think it's so important to have people in our lives to remind us, or to also have a way to remind ourselves through journaling, contemplation, whatever it is, that, there's an opportunity here to really go deep, go with something that I've always loved and I've always cared deeply about, and stay with it. And we grow strong from that. Otherwise, we're just caught in rumination and suffering.
Well, and that's why mindfulness and staying present are so important, because that other fuel is like, if it's fueling a runaway train. It's like, wait a minute. I want to stop right now and take a breath and notice what's happening, uh, and this isn't working for me.
Yeah.
And what am I doing? And what might I choose instead?
Yeah, to remember we have a choice. Yeah. The thing with mindfulness that's challenging with anxiety, I think, is that you create space for your mind to kind of crash in.
Mm.
I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and we were both sharing, after traumatic episodes in our life, that to try and sit still and quiet was a high risk, high risk activity, because our minds were so stirred up. And I think that's where it's really helpful to have a presence practice of mindfulness, where you're not sitting in silence, but you're immersed in something gentle and lovely with awareness. So, you're asking yourself, first of all, you slow down, because we tend to speed up and become quite erratic in our movements and thoughts when we're disturbed. So to do sweet things, choose to do sweet things and bring our attention to them, whether it's baking or gardening, to ask yourself, where am I? This morning I stepped into the little woods by my home, and there's a glimpse through the trees of a meadow, and I just looked across the meadow and I was thinking, my eyes are always reading, on Zoom meetings, that close-up experience. So I was stood in this little clearing by the trees, and I just stopped and looked through the gap, and I was looking as far away as I could at the trees opposite. And I was thinking, oh, you're a little heightened today. Okay, let's see, how many shapes and colors can I see in the trees opposite? How many shades of green? Let me, encourage my eyes to really gaze off into the distance, take some deep breaths. That kind of mindfulness, where you're shepherding your mind to notice things, is helpful.
And doing it in such a sweet way.
Yeah, gentle, patient.
Yeah, bringing creativity back into it. Boy, that really, really changes things up.
Yeah. We can't expect ourselves to flick a switch and be peaceful and settled and okay when things aren't peaceful and settled and okay. So we have to be compassionate, and we have to just, notice and softly direct ourselves. But that was really helpful to me. Just a couple of minutes, just stood taking deep breaths. What can I see? How relaxed can I get my body? Rather than thinking we're going to sit still and meditate, because it's not easy when the mind's stirred up.
Right. And to remember that you can't control so many of the outcomes in situations that you're grasping onto, that are that have you feeling like something needs to change, or uh, why is this happening? Or you can see something so clearly on the world stage that has you brokenhearted or whatever. To be in that space of brokenheartedness and gratitude,
Yeah.
be able to see that, to send out your contributions, your prayers, your love in any way that you see fit, and then to come back to that practice of building your peace of mind, and building the resilience and the anxiety, and knowing that whatever comes, you're going to be in much better shape to handle it, because of the practice of mindfulness, because of the practice of slowing down and remembering that you aren't here to control outcomes.
Yeah, we may as well get that, because we can't.
Exactly.
We may as well let that point land home. Yeah, I have friends at the moment that are practicing contemplative prayer and going into their spiritual practices with the intention of the good of all, really trying to send out peace. And I think that's a good place for us to be, because things happen, time passes, and we can either come out the other end frazzled or with some lessons learned and some coping skills acquired and some serenity and some peace cultivated. We have an opportunity to rise to it gently as not really a challenge, but kind of for me, it's like, it feels a bit like okay, I'm putting myself on a retreat, just really bringing some peace and prayer and contemplation into my days and spending careful time with the things that really matter to me.
One of the things that I become aware of is that if I focus on I am statements or affirmation statements, um, just kind of bringing it back to this knowing that in this moment right now I am okay. Uh, Very much like similar to the setup statements where you when we're doing EFT tapping, where you name what's bothering you, and then you come back and you remind yourself that you love yourself completely. To come back to those, even though the world seems completely out of control right now, I love and accept myself. And working through that, and then coming back to your knowing that the world has been chaotic in many, many ways most of your life. And if you look at history, you can say, oh, we've been here before in one way, shape, or form, and we're still here. And yes, things need to be improved, but we're still here and we still have a chance to make a difference. But then coming back to yourself in a loving self-care way that it just invites in so much more of creative immersion, of sweetness and self-love, to come back to that knowing that everything is exactly as it's meant to be, even though sometimes it feels like it's not.
Yeah. I think it's so easy for us to become distraught and fry our own nervous system.
That's why many find that simple, creative projects and pursuits will help hold their mind in a more peaceful place.
Yeah, I thought we could share a little of our processes in creativity. For me, there's a big shelter there under times of duress. I've shared previously on our podcast some years ago now. I was waiting in between tests for a heavy medical diagnosis, and I was spending the time listening to lectures, and I would colour in because it was hard for me to sit still and just listen. I was in a little bit of anxiety and I was very unwell. So I found that if I just coloured in some beautiful birds or flowers, I was able to listen a lot longer.
Mm.
And I noticed that I liked the sound of the pencils on the paper. I liked the colours. I liked the smell of the old-fashioned wooden colouring pencils. I liked the sound. I was listening to mainly spiritual lectures. And that just held as many senses steady as possible and really helped me. So that's somewhere I go back to. I like to write. I love creative journaling, doodling in my journal, decorating a favourite quote, playing with the words, meditating on the words, letting them soak in. And the mind is so fast and it tends to jump around. Sometimes we don't even see it go. It goes into this awful looping dialogue. But I find that writing slows it down
Mm.
and keeps it with one stream of thought. So I find writing really helpful.
Yeah, journaling and writing is such a beautiful way to get whatever is floating around in your mind on the page, for sure. I find that the creative immersion for this time right now is my time in the garden. I'm starting every day that I can, barefoot on the grass, uh, taking care of my flowers and plants and being with the trees on our property and just being in that space. It makes such a difference. It really, really calms my mind and keeps me present with what I like to always call the great and crushing beauty all around me, instead of the great and crushing headlines.
Yeah.
Or lately, I've been making new recipes, new to me recipes, and I find that really fun and challenging. And then being able to share that with the family and, do we like this new recipe? Is this a keeper? What would we do differently? That kind of thing I find to be helpful. I listen to a lot of high vibe music and high vibe people whenever I can to keep my mind where I want to keep it, in that space of a higher vibration. I love access consciousness for that. I've been practicing now access for many years, and we just had that sweet interview with Dr. Dane here about being you and how you can look after yourself in this world. It just really, really helps, and affirmations help. The just reminding myself and inviting you to remind yourself that you are already where you're meant to be, and that the universe, God, however you want to phrase it, is aligning to meet you there, to be in that place of vibrant health, happiness, to remind yourself that you're rooted in this present moment and that you're safe where you stand.
Our mind's going to have opinions and thoughts anyway. And if we can change them to good thoughts and gratitudes, seeing the best in others, seeing the possibility in our day to bring some spiritual depth, then there really is a gift in that. The mind's going to do its thing anyway, but we have a chance to upgrade it and help it be more peaceful. And of course, that goes right through our physiology. I was at a gathering at the weekend on Zoom of a spiritual teacher. I was just listening to her and looking at her face looked so beautiful. And I was thinking everything she says is so inspiring and compassionate, and you could just see it. And then she said, when you're in that place of prayer, you cultivate that loving awareness in your heart and then feel it go through all areas of your body. Just feel it radiate out through every part of your body. And I thought that was very beautiful. And I was trying to practice along listening to her. And then I was thinking how we know how that works, because when you feel fear or anxiety, you feel it shoot out through your body. You feel it affect your chest. You feel it affect your stomach. Often with anxiety, we have so many physical symptoms. We have a thought that's not a truth. It's not a reality. We have a thought, and then it shoots into every area of our body.
No doubt.
And then she was teaching how to send this peace, loving, prayerful contemplation in the same way. And I was thinking that's a very healing thing to do, as well as it was very beautiful practice, spiritual practice, but so healing too.
Well, thank you for this conversation, Ananga. It's been really helpful to share where we're at in our own journey of creating that personal peace and that safe oasis, that place that you and I've been building and practicing for so long, and to be able to share that with our listeners. And we'd love to hear from you if you've got some practices. We'd love to know what your creative immersion looks like and how you're creating a safe space for yourself. And if you are a patron or want to become a patron at Patreon, we're going to be sharing some affirmations that support this episode as well. And I also pulled an oracle card for this episode that I'm going to be sharing. So head on over to patreon.com/anxietyslayer, and you'll find those affirmations there. And thank you so much for listening to Anxiety Slayer. We're grateful that you come back and listen in, and we'll see you again soon.